Right, it's time now for Focus, and today we're looking at the state of press freedom in Turkey. Since last July's failed coup, the authorities have shut down scores of media outlets and arrested more than 100 journalists, accusing them of terror links. Now, there aren't many voices of dissent. They're having to be more innovative than ever, as Fatma Kaziboga and Hussein Assad report.
These are the studios of A Haber in Istanbul, one of the most popular news channels in Turkey. It is no secret here that the editorial line is in favour of the government.
Neutrality is meaningless. Everybody has a point of view. Two people can write the same story, but their perspectives can be completely different, changing the entire story. I really think neutrality is impossible.
Duygu Laloğlu is one of the channel's main presenters. She believes that the country is embroiled in a war of information between supporters and detractors of the AKP, Turkey's ruling party since 2002.
We defend the government because we believe that for 14 years, the government in Turkey has been leading a silent revolution. We support them because we believe that this has been good for our country.
The channel is far from alone. Since the attempted coup on July 15, some 200 opposition media channels have been shut down and more than 100 journalists imprisoned, all accused of disseminating terrorist propaganda. As a result, the media landscape is overwhelmingly pro-government. But there is a new reaction. A few members of the Radio and Television Supreme Council in Ankara have commented on the lack of objectivity in the Turkish media.
We cannot claim to espouse pluralism when all day long, all our TV stations only broadcast live speeches by the president and members of the ruling party. The opposition must be afforded the same broadcast time.
We head to Parliament to attend a press conference given by Turkey's third largest political party, the pro-Kurdish HDP. 1 in 5 of their MPs have recently been arrested and imprisoned for their supposed links to the PKK. In the conference room, most of the seats remain empty. Party advisors record and broadcast the speech on social media, the only way, they say, to bypass censorship. The party spokesman accuses the government of trying to silence their voice.
When our party members were placed in custody, the authorities blocked social networks and slowed down access to the internet. The aim was to prevent a reaction, even the organisation of a simple press conference. They're treating us like a terrorist group to discourage people from supporting us.
This is by far the best place I've worked over the past 10 years. I feel great here. I'm free to do whatever I want.
These are the officers of Medyascope, the first totally online Turkish television channel. They have little means, and the control room is a modest affair.
We're just like a normal TV channel. If we want to, we have the technical means to broadcast by satellite, but right now that's the opposite of what we stand for.
This project was launched by a team of journalists, tired of government pressure and self-censorship.
I think that we have filled a void by providing access to information as it is. We give people the straight facts. We also invite guests that do not appear on other media, giving them a platform to express themselves.
The Turkish media is a reflection of the country, divided and with a weakened opposition. This situation worries defenders of human rights, who fear growing pressure in Turkey, where freedom of expression is already under threat.
Now, for more on this, I'm now joined from Coventry University in the UK by Bahar Basha. She's a research fellow at the Centre for Peace, Trust and Social Relations. Hello, thank you very much indeed for your time. Now, how would you describe the state of press freedom in Turkey today?
I mean, I think it was a very good job, what you did with your coverage. There is no press freedom anymore, as you reported. The opposition is really weak, and the media outlets where the people who are in the opposition can actually express themselves are becoming smaller and smaller, and some people are actually self-censoring because they're afraid of being arrested. Even a tweet can put you in jail now, so people are trying to become extremely careful.
Now, of course, we've given the numbers for the number of media outlets closed and journalists arrested since the failed coup. But even before then, President Erdogan was crushing dissent, right?
Of course. I mean, it started, this growing authoritarian tendency started even before the coup. But as the president described it himself, the coup was actually a gift from God. So they enabled the ruling party and the judiciary and the security services to oppress people who are against the current regime and what is about to come. So it was always there. It's just getting more and more intense. And because we don't have an independent judiciary anymore, and there is the state of emergency, which is prolonged for another 3 months, we can expect more oppression to come.
And do you agree with the critics who say that by arresting all of these journalists and shutting down TV stations, newspapers, etc., the government really is trying to put a stop to any coverage of the Kurdish issue?
I mean, this was just one thing, and it has been happening for many decades. So it was hard to talk about the Kurds for a long time. Only during the peace process, it was not a taboo anymore. So we actually felt free to talk about anything we wanted. But during the last 3-4 years, it's back on track again in terms of oppression. But this time, I think oppression on opposition media has another reason, which is the discussions for a potential regime change in Turkey with the constitutional amendments. So now, for example, we see that academics or journalists who can actually discuss these issues are put in prison. For instance, let's say İştar Gözaydın, who was a professor at Gediz University, which was closed by the government, is now in prison, and she would be the perfect person to discuss the constitutional amendments.
Tell us more. I'm sorry to interrupt, but tell us a bit more about these constitutional amendments and the president's ambitions.
I mean, they have been there for a while, and the ruling party has been discussing the desire to change the system to a presidential one for a long time. So there's nothing new here. But currently, the political parties are discussing this issue, and as we know, most of the HDP representatives are in prison as well, so they can't join. There is no free discussion about this. But basically, the constitutional amendments changed the current parliamentary system to a one-man rule. They try to sell this package by saying that it will make the country more secure and stable. So basically, it completely removes the prime minister, and there will be only advisory ministries, etc. So it will just give full power to the president on judiciary, all the executive, etc.
You mentioned before that the state of emergency imposed after the failed coup had been extended by a few months. The government, of course, saying that this is all about countering terrorism, although it hasn't prevented, as we've seen, attacks in the months since the failed coup. Is there any evidence at all to back up the government's claim that the media crackdown in particular is in the interests of national security?
I mean, they claim that it's for the interest of national security. And, I don't think anybody believes that to prevent terrorism, because as we have seen, they couldn't prevent anything. And there is now an environment of insecurity in Turkey, and people fear for their lives on a daily basis. So what is happening now, I think if the coup had succeeded, that would have been a horrible thing for Turkey. But what we have now, the picture we have now, is not any different. And what I see is that the emergency, state of emergency, and the decrees that is coming out every single day is actually aiming at suppressing the opposition by silencing people at the very least, so that there cannot be a healthy discussion about the constitutional amendments. I mean, imagine you go to a referendum for a constitutional change under the state of emergency, where there's no free speech or discussion. This is a disaster.
So no free speech, no free media, a massive purge. You mentioned, of course, academics. They're amongst the thousands of people who've lost their jobs in the last few months. Do you think there'll come a point soon when Turks en masse will say enough is enough?
I mean, I'm not sure about that, because we are a divided society now. I think I can use that term to define Turkey nowadays. We are divided between the AKP supporters and the rest, so it's almost 50-50. And then we are divided among ourselves, for example, secular, non-secular, nationalist and liberal or leftist, and it's always we always had these problems. But there is polarization in Turkey nowadays, which is becoming deeper and deeper. So there are people who support the ruling party and the president no matter what. And what's happening outside Turkey, for example, in Syria or elsewhere, does not really alter their support. So maybe this environment of insecurity can change the checks and balances in Turkey. But so far, I do not see a major decline in their support.
Could you tell us a bit more about the divisions? Because the president the other day brought up lifestyle differences when he was making his first comments since the nightclub attack in Istanbul. Where does secularism stand in today's Turkey? How much of an issue is it, this division between secularists and non?
I mean, you might know better than I do. Turkey has been a secular country, and it was somehow imposed. So before, the non-secular groups were under oppression, and now it's the opposite. But during the AKP rule in the beginning, this pressure was not really there, and many people were actually, thinking that these are conspiracy theories. AKP will never put pressure because it was in the line with the EU regulations, etc. And now we have seen this gradual Islamization, and especially after the latest elections, we feel it more and more with the declarations of the Diyanet, for example, or the politicians. And the last example was the arrest of, or they have been taken under custody. Sorry, the custody of two students who were basically talking about secularism, visiting places, doing protesting the current government policies. They have been put under custody just a few days ago. So talking about secularism or supporting secularism is considered as crime or provoking people for hatred, etc. So the government has their own interpretation of terrorism, what is terrorism and what's not. So anybody who is not in line with the government policies can actually be called as a terrorist right now.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed for your time and your analysis, Bahar Basha at Coventry University. Now, before we go, some news coming into us from Turkey. We're hearing that at least 3 people have been injured in an explosion outside a courthouse in the western city of Izmir. The Doga news agency says the explosion was caused by a car bomb. The incident, of course, coming after several attacks carried out by the Islamic State group and Kurdish militants. And we understand state media is saying that 2 suspected attackers have now been shot dead. Quick break, I'll be right back.